A billionaire father. Hearts changes when a black waitress dances with his disabled son. They say money can buy everything, comfort, fame, luxury, but not love, not humanity, and definitely not respect. The camera pans over the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers sparkle above. Laughter echoes, champagne glasses clink. It's a charity event hosted by one of the richest men in the city. Richard Holloway, a billionaire known for his empire, power, and perfection. He sits at the center table, dressed in a tailored black suit, yet there's something different in his eyes tonight, emptiness. Beside him in a wheelchair is his 10-year-old son, Ethan, born with a condition that limits his movement, but never his spirit. Ethan watches people dance, eyes shining, a faint smile of longing on his face. But no one dares to ask him for a dance. He's the billionaire's son, yes, but also the boy in the chair. The guests whisper softly, pretending to admire the decorations while stealing pitying glances. Some smile, others avoid eye contact. Even the music feels distant, like joy reserved for others. Richard notices his son's silence and forces a smile. "Next time, buddy," he says softly, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. But Ethan just nods. He's heard that line too many times. Just then, a waitress passes by a young black woman named Maya, carrying a tray of desserts. Her uniform is simple, her hair tied neatly, her steps careful, but her eyes, they notice what others ignore. She sees the boy's face, his eyes following the rhythm of the music. The silent wish he doesn't say out loud. She pauses, heart tugging. For a moment she debates, should she? No, she's just a waitress. People here wouldn't approve. But something stronger than fear moves her humanity. She sets the tray aside and walks toward Ethan. Richard looks up, slightly confused. No one ever approaches them without permission. Maya kneels beside the boy and smiles warmly. "Hi there," she says softly. "You like dancing?" Ethan blinks, surprised. "I do, but I can't," he says shyly. Her smile deepens. "Maybe you can just differently." The room's laughter and music seem to fade. A few guests turn, curious. The billionaire's eyebrow arches slightly. Maya gently extends her hand. "May I have this dance?" Ethan hesitates. "But I'm in a chair." She chuckles lightly. "Then I'll dance right here with you." And she does. Right there beside his wheelchair. She starts to move to the slow rhythm, small, graceful steps, eyes locked with his. Ethan lifts his hands, mimicking her movement. Their laughter echoes pure, real, unfiltered. The room goes quiet. One by one, heads turn. Phones stop scrolling. Even the band pauses for a moment. And deep inside, something begins to shift. Something that all his wealth could never buy. Richard freezes. His heart beats faster, a feeling he hasn't known in years. The world seems to blur, and all he sees is his son's smile, brighter than any chandelier in the hall. For the first time in a long time, Ethan is not the disabled boy. He's just a child, laughing, dancing, living. And Maya, the woman society barely noticed, became the only one who truly saw him. In a world obsessed with titles and appearances, kindness often hides in the humblest hands. The billionaire doesn't move. He just watches. A single tear rolls down his cheek, hidden behind his composed face. Some moments don't end when the music stops. They echo inside you long after everyone's gone. The grand ballroom was empty now. Waiters cleared tables, laughter faded, and chandeliers dimmed. But Richard Holloway still sat there, staring at the spot where it happened, where his son smiled. For the first time in years, that simple, innocent dance had left something inside him unsettled. For years he had funded charities, sponsored hospitals, built schools, yet never felt what he felt tonight. Gratitude without price. He looked at his son. Ethan was asleep in his wheelchair, a soft smile resting on his face. The kind that no medicine, no luxury, no therapy had been able to create. Richard whispered to himself. Who was she? He turned to one of his assistants. Find that waitress, the one who danced with Ethan. The assistant hesitated. Sir, There were many staff members. Richard's tone sharpened. Then find all of them. The next morning, while the city woke to routine, the billionaire's office was in motion. His staff scrambled through guest lists, catering records, and event photos. Hours later, his secretary entered with a folder. Her name is Maya Johnson. She works part-time at the hotel. Single mother, lives in the West District. Richard looked at the file, and for the first time in a long time, his heart felt heavy, not from business pressure, but humility. He sat back in silence. All that wealth, he thought. And I needed a stranger to show me what love looks like. Later that day, his car pulled up in front of a small neighborhood, cracked sidewalks, faded houses, kids playing barefoot on the street. His driver looked uncertain, but Richard stepped out. His polished shoes met dusty ground. He knocked on the door of a small apartment. It opened after a pause. Maya stood there surprised, holding a towel in one hand. Her eyes widened. "Mr. Halloway?" Richard gave a polite nod. "Yes, I wanted to thank you." She looked confused. "For what?" "For something money can't buy," he said softly. "For making my son smile." Maya smiled gently, lowering her eyes. "He didn't need money, sir. He just needed someone who looked at him, not his wheelchair." Her words hit him like truth unfiltered. For a moment he didn't know what to say. All his life people spoke carefully around him with fear, respect, or greed. But her words were simple, honest, human. He looked around the small apartment, modest but warm. A few photos on the wall, a half-finished painting, a school bag on the couch. "Your child?" he asked. She nodded proudly. "Yes, her name's Lila, she's 7. At that moment, Lila ran out messy hair, paint on her hands. She looked up curiously. "Mom, is he the man from the party?" Maya chuckled. "Yes, sweetheart. This is Mr. Halloway." Lila smiled innocently. "Thank you for the cake. It was yummy." Richard couldn't help but smile. It had been so long since someone spoke to him without fear or formality. He took a deep breath. "Maya, I want to help you. A better job, better home?" She interrupted gently, shaking her head. "With all respect, sir, I don't need charity. I'm fine, just teach your son what you saw that night. That kindness isn't weakness." Richard went silent. Her words were sharper than any deal he'd lost, more valuable than any advice he'd ever paid for. She had nothing, yet she gave everything he never had: honesty. He nodded slowly. "You're right." As he turned to leave, Ethan's voice came from the car. "Dad, is that her?" Maya stepped forward, smiling. "Hey, dancer boy." Ethan grinned. "Can we dance again?" Richard looked at Maya, eyes softening. "Would you?" She smiled. "Always." They shared a brief moment, no spotlight, no music, no stage, just two humans connected by something deeper than circumstance. As he got back into the car, Richard looked one last time at Maya's small home. She had less than he could ever imagine. Yet tonight, he realized she was richer than he'd ever been. The car drove away, and for the first time in years, the billionaire didn't feel like a man of power. He felt like a student of life. For days, Daniel couldn't sleep. That image of Maya guiding his son's steps replayed in his mind like a scene from a dream he didn't deserve. He had spent his life buying comfort, yet for the first time he felt poor in kindness. One morning, without telling anyone, Daniel drove back to that same restaurant. The same waitress, Maya, was there tying her apron, her face calm but tired. She didn't notice him at first. When she turned and saw him, her smile vanished. "You again?" she said quietly, remembering how he'd looked at her before. Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes, I came to say thank you." Maya frowned, confused. "Thank you? For what?" "For reminding me what being human means," he said softly. "That night, you didn't just help my son dance. You helped me see the kind of man I've become." She stayed silent, holding a tray, unsure if this was a joke or a trap. He continued, his voice breaking. "I was ashamed of my own prejudice. I saw color when my son saw kindness. And that difference," he paused, "made me realize who was truly disabled." Maya's eyes softened. "Sir, I didn't do anything special. I just wanted your boy to smile." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's the thing. You did it without expecting anything. I've lived my whole life surrounded by people who smile because of money. My son smiled that night because of love." For a moment, the busy restaurant faded away. Just a billionaire and a waitress, two souls standing in the silence of truth. Then Daniel reached into his coat pocket. Maya shook her head before he could speak. "If you're here to pay me, please don't. Some things aren't for sale." He smiled for the first time in years. "I wasn't going to pay you," he said. "I came to offer you something else. A partnership. My company runs a foundation for children with disabilities. I want you to help lead it." Her eyes widened. "Me? Why?" "Because people like you remind the world that humanity is richer than any fortune." A tear slipped down Maya's cheek. She nodded slowly, unable to speak. As Daniel left, he looked back one last time. His son, sitting by the window, waved at Maya with the same bright smile. And in that moment, Daniel knew he'd been given more that night than he could ever repay. A year later, the ballroom of the city's grand hotel glowed under crystal lights. Cameras flashed. Journalists whispered. Tonight was the launch of the Rise Foundation, a charity created to support children with disabilities. At the center of it all stood Maya, no longer wearing her waitress uniform but a graceful white dress. She looked nervous as she adjusted her bracelet, the same one she wore the night she danced with Daniel's son. Daniel took the stage, his son in a wheelchair beside him, smiling proudly. The room fell silent. He looked at Maya and then at the audience of wealthy investors, politicians and executives. "A year ago," he began, "I met someone who taught me a lesson. I should have learned long ago that kindness doesn't see status, and respect doesn't see color." The hall remained still. Daniel's voice trembled but grew stronger. "My son, who many call disabled, showed me how strong innocence can be, and a woman society ignored showed me what real dignity looks like. That's why this foundation exists, not just to help children walk or dance, but to help hearts see beyond labels." He gestured toward Maya. "Ladies and gentlemen, the soul behind this foundation, Ms. Maya Johnson." The spotlight shifted. The audience turned and applauded slowly at first, then louder, like a wave of realization spreading through the room. Maya stepped up, trying to hold back tears. "I never imagined being here," she said softly. "All I wanted was to make a little boy smile. I didn't know it would change his father's world. But maybe that's what kindness does. It multiplies when you least expect it." Daniel's son wheeled toward her and raised his small hand. "Can we dance again?" he asked innocently. Maya laughed through her tears. "Of course." The music began the same soft tune from that night. They danced slowly, one leading, one following. The billionaire watched, his heart full, no longer proud of his money, but of the humanity he'd rediscovered. As the camera panned out, Daniel whispered under his breath words meant for everyone, not just the room. "Respect has no color. Love has no price." And with that, the dance ended, but the lesson didn't. Because sometimes, one simple act of kindness can rewrite a lifetime of arrogance.